ready. Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome, everybody. Welcome to the Roland stage. Welcome to NAMM. I would like to get this going by introducing our first performer. Ladies and gentlemen, one of the pioneers of electronic music and synonym for innovation. With 80 million albums sold, including genre-defining records such as Oxygen and Equinox. He's a 2017 Grammy nominee with the record for the biggest outdoor concert and the first Western artist to officially have been invited to perform for the People's Republic of China. But he's most of all known for his unique compositions and charismatic live performances. Please help me welcome to the stage, Jean-Michel Jarre.
All right. Are you comfortable, Jean-Michel?
Yes.
So am I.
Good morning.
Good morning, everybody. Also, good morning, everybody watching us on Facebook, YouTube 360, and our own website, roland.com/360. Welcome to everybody watching around the world. Jean-Michel, thank you very much again, and congratulations again for yesterday because of your Roland Lifetime Achievement Award. We were very proud to have you here, so that was a fantastic event. We got some really good reactions to that as well. So I asked you some questions yesterday, and of course we had a little bit of time pressure because it was a press conference. Very happy to have a little bit more time today and to talk a little bit about several items, several themes in your musical career, your musical history. The first thing I would like to ask is when we go back to the end of the 60s, early 70s, the whole theme about synthesizers was actually taken out of the academic world. I remember IRCAM, I remember universities in different universities in the US, all working with electronica, but it was not really a commercial style of music yet. I mean, we had in the early 70s, you started bringing out albums. We had, for example, Emerson, Lake and Palmer using the Mini Moog in Lucky Man as a first, melodic use, musical use in a musical context of a synthesizer. So that whole shift from more academic world to a more musical environment, how did you experience that whole transition?
Actually, what happened at the beginning of electronic music, we owe a lot to public radio stations. Because actually, electronic music really, I was saying yesterday that if rock and roll, is born in this country, in the US, and then invaded the world, electronic music really is born originally in Europe, and then also invaded the world. But it's really started linked with the public radio. Because the first oscillators, even before synthesizers, the first oscillators, the first filters, and the first gear we were using were actually more or less stolen from radio stations, and to create the first kind of bank of gear, really. And actually, if you take the German public radio station where Stockhausen was linked with,
yes.
The French public radio station where Pierre Schaeffer and Pierre Henry originally founded the Music Research Center. Even the BBC also laboratory. I mean, it's where everything started, and so some people were working there and involved there just for experimentation, and some other musicians like me were more there to try to widen actually the field of experimentation coming from either classical background or rock or jazz background. And I remember that I was obsessed in those days by trying to create this bridge between experimentation and pop and melodies.
Yeah.
I mean, I've always been convinced, like a lot of people here, that the most important thing in music is the melody, and at the same time, the revolution of the mid 20th century regarding music was coming from these people. For the first time, we were considering music not only an activity based on notes, based on solfeggios, but also the fact of we could take a microphone, going outside, recording the sound of the wind, of the rain, of the street, and making music with noises.
The musique concrète.
That's right, musique concrète, as Pierre Schaeffer called it in France. He's the real grandfather of DJs, actually.
It's actually kind of sampling avant la lettre, isn't it?
Exactly, absolutely. And then I think suddenly this kind of approach became in phase with what the audience expectations. It was linked also with a certain idea of science fiction, of this kind of fantasy of hopes I mean, the society had regarding the future, thinking that year 2000, after year 2000, everything will change. Cars would fly, the social and education system would be perfect. And we'd be obviously a bit disappointed after year 2000 because it was not exactly what we were expected. But this whole electronic music became the soundtrack of an old generation and a generation hoping for a different future.
Yeah.
It was linked also with movies such as 2001: A Space Odyssey by Kubrick.
Yeah.
I mean, this kind of mood, I mean, created this kind of sudden interest and excitement for electronic music.
Yeah, and of course, I mean, we had prog rock at that time, using synthesizers. We had more melody-based and more sonic sculptures-based music, like your music. Then suddenly, in the first half of the 70s, came disco with for example, Giorgio Moroder using synthesizers and using sequencers. Was there a lot of interaction between those different groups? Did you have a lot of contact, or were everybody kind of working on his own little mountain and doing his own stuff?
I think it was obviously before the internet, and actually we were all exploring in our fields. I remember that when I heard the first Kraftwerk single, that was Autobahn.
Yeah.
I mean I thought it was a Californian band singing in German. I mean, imitating the Beach Boys, and I thought it was so cool. And then obviously I discovered a few weeks later that they were German, and we were neighbors. So it's a very good example to show how much we were quite isolated in our own field. But obviously that was part of the same family. And you know, today, which is interesting, and I'm partly happy to be at Roland here, because I think that electronic music here today, we can feel that electronic music has a legacy, has a family, and has a future. And it's linked to the story of Roland's as a company, because Roland today has a legacy. It is a family, and it has a future as well. And electronic music is also more probably than any kind of style of music. Obviously, is really linked directly to the evolution of technology.
Yeah. In those early days, of course, I think from a musical point of view, certainly when we refer to your music, the melody is really something which is really important. I mean, your songs can be played on a guitar as well, because they're just good songs. But how much of an interaction between the technology, so let's say, for example, being inspired by new sounds coming from a new synthesizer, and the actual making of a song, how much interaction was there? Or was it for you possible to just think very abstract about the song first, and then, okay, whatever technology you had under your hands was the technology that you were going to use, or was there a real interaction between the technology and making your songs?
You know, I mean, people working in this room with synthesizers know that. I mean, it's a constant go between the instruments and the idea you have in your mind. Sometimes you start with melody, sometimes you start with the sound that you discover, and then the interesting moment is when you lose control facing the instruments, when suddenly you have an accident, something unexpected that creates a new idea. And I would like to say that about technology, that we don't realize that technology always dictated styles and not the reverse. It's because the violin has been invented that Vivaldi existed. It's because the TR-808 has been invented that people like Jeff Mills and the old techno in Detroit, for instance, I mean, started. Beyond Roland technology, if you take a plugin like Massive from Native Instruments, I mean, without this plugin, probably Skrillex and the dubstep wouldn't exist in the same way. And so it's a constant go between the technology, bringing you some new, opening new doors, and the fact that as human beings, we are always expressing and trying to express from the beginning of mankind the same kind of emotions. So, the relationship from regarding death and love and solitude and the basic human emotions, and generation after generation, we're just expressing those timeless emotions, human emotions, through the technology of our times.
Another question. I've had the privilege of being in your studio for a couple of times just outside of Paris, and I'm always overwhelmed by the fantastic layout and by the instruments that you have there. And I'm always very proud to see many Roland instruments there as well, old ones as well as new ones. So can you give us a little bit of insight? You have a special place in your heart for Roland. I know that because you told me already before. Can you explain us a little bit? You know, you used so many Roland instruments through your career. Even up to today, you were using the System 8 as your front main synthesizer during your concerts. Can you explain a little bit about how Roland takes a space in your setup creatively?
You know, which is interesting, and it's a very important point to discuss here at NAMM, that every brand has a specific sound, and Roland sound, even through decades, you kept a kind of philosophy towards sound. I mean, you can instantly recognize the sound of a Roland compared to the sound of a Moog, or the sound of a Korg even. And my first synth has been the S1000. I was dreaming about the S700, the big modular, but it was too expensive at that time. But you have, okay, let's say that there are two different approach of sounds in the synthesizer, the first analog synthesizers. The American approach, or the Western approach, and the Japanese approach. And you could say that the American or the Western, the European approach of sound is probably fatter, and there is an explanation probably because of the kind of components used, and the Japanese sound is probably more edgy, thinner. But thinner doesn't mean that it's less interesting. It has that kind of edgy sound that actually gave birth really to all the techno, all this kind of crispy, edgy sound so used in modern music. And this is really coming from Roland and the Japanese approach of synthesizers. And obviously the drum machines for me, is part of my DNA. I love working with all the Roland drum machines. They all have, as we know, a specific sound, and it's like working in a symphony with a symphonic orchestra. If you want to, you need the brass, you need the strings, you need the percussions, you need the woods, and it's the same thing with synthesizers and with Roland synthesizers. You take a Jupiter 8 and you take a System 8. they're close, but they're not the same.
Yeah.
And it's what I really like. The reason why, through years, my studio became bigger and bigger because I had to keep all of them. And this is what Roland succeeded through years and through decades. To try to, keep faithful to a kind of philosophy, a kind of DNA, and also being able to evolve with the evolution of technology and specifically the evolution and the revolution between the analog era and the digital one.
Yeah, yeah. So your performances and your live concerts, by the way, I heard, I think it's official now that you will start a US tour in May.
Yes.
So there will be Los Angeles dates, guys. So that's going to be very, very interesting. But looking at your live performances, the setup is really, really complex. You're using a lot of synthesizers, obviously. There's a lot of Roland synthesizers in there. But you're also using, and your musicians are also using TD-50 and pads and so on. How complex is your, well, how complex? Of course it is very complex, but how is your live setup managed? Do you have specific guys taking care only of the management of all the MIDI and stuff like that and all the lighting?
Yes, we have 256 outputs. From the various instruments we are using. We have different setups and fairly complex MIDI setups. And I must say that the announcement that Roland did about Rainlink yesterday is something that I was waiting for 20 years. So you've been quite late in trying to develop this concept, but we are very happy to all musicians. I think are going to be very, very happy to say goodbye to any kind of latency problems, because that's obviously one of the main problems in studio. But I would say it's even worse in concerts when you have to fight against latency regarding instruments, but also regarding video being linked to what we do. And so we have different MIDI setups. We are 3 on stage, and actually I'm quite obsessed by latency and by the fact that everything should be in sync, because this is the main difference between playing a live instrument and playing electronic instruments. I always consider that the latency should come from the musicians, not from the instrument. And the imperfection should come from us, not from the instruments we play.
Yeah.
And with Rainlink, I think that's a very, very good news, because and also the fairly rough and quite I would say too simple approach. Even if MIDI was fantastic when I started, this 127 steps. Creates a lot of problems, as we know, in a lot of occasions. So on stage, we are trying to get rid of this by actually also playing the maximum of things live. We have some sequences coming from live Ableton. I must say that I'm using lots of Ableton even on stage, because it's very stable.
We have a very good relationship with Ableton.
Yes, I know. I should not talk about Ableton too much at
of
Roland,
course.
but you're
No
not.
problem. No problem.
But
it's what you use, so that's as simple as that.
Yes, and also, we should also what I like in Roland philosophy, and this is what Rainlink is going to be, is actually, to be open to not only the competition, but we are all on the same boat. And by the end of the day, the kind of Apple Steve Jobs type of paranoia is dated. I think now we are entering in a total different world where we need to share our knowledge. We should to share our technology, and this is what I like with the new Roland philosophy with Rainlink and the Roland Cloud.
Yeah.
That's going to change everything in music, in my opinion.
Yeah, we had the opportunity yesterday to have some time together with Jean-Michel from Roland Virtual Sonics and from the Roland Cloud. And you were immediately captured by the whole idea. I think also the whole idea behind the Roland Cloud being, the community place where we can actually interact, and we were immediately talking about, very, very interesting ideas. It's really that kind of approach that you like about also the Roland Cloud, and also, of course, the Rainlink being the technology behind that. Eh?
Absolutely, I think the sharing process is very important in music since the old Egyptians and ancient Greek approach of music. I mean, the sharing process is very important.
Yeah, yeah.
And in electronic music, as we know, for a long time, because of the technology, we were like isolated, like painters or writers in our atelier. And the fact to be able to share, I mean, even performances with this, the Roland Cloud, we were talking about this yesterday with Jeremy yesterday night. The idea is also being able to, can you believe that I could be in Paris and you could be in Los Angeles and we could make music live together without latency, playing together. It means that, which is great if a drummer got the flu, he could stay at home and doing a recording session from his kitchen. And that's beyond this, beyond the anecdote. It's really going to change the way, I mean, we can share music and doing music together. Yep. Behind this, the fact that everything is available should not let us forget that it's also going to create more and more problem for the economy of music, and I would like just to comment briefly on this. Actually, music is everywhere. Music never generated so much money, and the authors, the creators we are, never got so little. And that also has it's something that we have to think about and to address. We have to create a new, at the same time we are creating new systems for making the life of the musicians and the life of producers easy and easier. Yeah. We have also to invent and to create a new business model for music. It's very urgent, that.
Yeah, absolutely. Good. Well, I would encourage some Q&A at this moment. So, Roger, we have somebody with a microphone. So, some public Q&A. Anybody has a specific question to Jean-Michel, please go. It's your moment.
Hello, how are you? I'm
Hi.
Lucas.
Hi.
I saw you the other day on Amoeba. Are you going to play something later?
No.
Okay.
That's not in the planning.
What inspired you to play music?
What?
What was that inspired you to become what you are?
Actually, what I like with electronic music is, I'm from Lyon in France. We are like to consider ourselves as the capital of cooking. And I always considered electronic music like cooking. I mean, it's a very tactile and sensual approach of making music. In a sense, much less abstract than writing notes on a piece of paper with a pencil and waiting that a publisher would make your music possible to be heard. I mean, which is great is you can actually cooking loops, beats, frequencies, textures in a very tactile and very sensual way. It's what I like in electronic music, which is a paradox because lots of people out there, as we know, are still considering sometimes electronic music as cold or robotic. In my opinion, it's the reverse. I mean, we should never forget that it's not the music which is electronic, but the instruments we're using. And the emotions of lack of emotions is coming from us, and from the guy doing the music. But I mean, to answer more precisely to your question, I think the source of inspiration to me, I've always been linked with visuals. I mean, when I started electronic music, I had nobody behind. When a young guy starts now, he has a fairly heavy heritage of 40, 50 years of pretty intense, interesting creations. When I started, I mean, my source of inspirations were more linked to movies, to cinema, to paintings. I mean, and I was just briefly mentioning 2001 and Space Odyssey. I mean, for people of my generation, even for younger generation, it has been really very, very important source of inspiration. And also the old science fiction, but also I would say this idea of that I always considered electronic music linked with outdoor. This is the reason why I did lots of outdoor concerts, because and Oxygen is actually a good title for that, because I always linked my music with soundscapes and outdoor situation, and the fact that I always thought that rock and hip hop or jazz is a music that you plug your energy into an electric plug in the wall and to receive the music on your body. And where electronic music, I'm not talking about dance floor, dance music. But for electronic music, I always consider this more linked to space and to outer space or just the space around us.
All right, one more question here, Gary.
Jean-Michel, it's a pleasure to meet you.
Thank you.
You've been an influence of mine my entire life, and I actually cite you as the reason why I now live in the USA, because music brought me here. But one of the biggest influences for me, which the first time I played it, I actually detested it, was Zuluk. I didn't understand this new direction, but because I paid so much for it on import, I eventually played it just to get my money's worth. And it's now actually Ethnicolor I cite as my favorite piece of music of all time. Now, from that being your first album where you collaborated with other people like Laurie and so on, to the newer albums right now where you're doing similar with Vince Clarke and so on and so forth, what is it that inspires you to work with specific artists?
Actually, thank you for having been stubborn for listening to Zuluk, because it's a very special project to me. I mean, this was just with Peter Gabriel. We've been the first artists in Europe to receive the Fairlight as the magic sampler. And for me, funnily enough, it was like going back to my roots when I was studying electroacoustic music concrète with Pierre Schaeffer, where we were actually making music with sounds that we were recording. And suddenly you have, instead of spending hours in a rather laborious way to cut and paste and using scissors and sellotape with magnetic tape to create some music with sounds. Suddenly you could record the sound of your dog and playing chords with barkings and instantly. And that was obviously quite exciting. And I decided to do this project because I do mainly instrumental music, and particularly at that time. And the idea was to use vocals, not like working with a singer, but using voices like for their phonetic aspect, not for the meaning, and replacing the line of the bass, the line of sequences by vocal bits and samples. And then for this, I said I really would like to work with some people and able to understand that. And Laurie Anderson obviously is someone, a real pioneer in all this kind of experimentation with vocals. And also Marcus Miller, being known as the fantastic bass player and jazz player he is, but also very obsessed by the sound of his instrument. So we worked together with on this, and Adrien Bilou also being a very audacious guitar player. So collaboration is something that I always like from time to time, and actually recently I did this massive project called Electronica. I mean, gathering around me more than 30 collaborators and 30 artists who've been and are a source of inspiration to me, all linked to electronic music. And instead, each time I worked with collaborators, instead of sending files to people you're not going to meet or to talk during by sending files, I really wanted, as almost as a dogma for me, to be able to sharing the creative process physically in their studio or in my studio, because as we know, music is about all this. And I don't like the word featuring. I mean, this idea of just sending files to people you'll never talk to, most of the time more for marketing reasons than anything else. And I must say that each time it has been a very intense learning process for me. I mean, I spent the last 4 or 5 years working for Electronica with great people such as M83 and Massive Attack and Pete Townsend and Tangerine Dream, Boys Noise, Armin van Buuren, Moby Air, and each time it's a different story. And where as electronic musicians we are quite shy in our studio and quite isolated, and we have our secrets, the way to approach sounds, and it has been a very interesting process to share these experiences.
Good.
Thank you.
More questions? Yes.
I gotta say, I love your music, man. I have another 20 questions for you, but anyway, there is any chance to share in a concert stage with other musicians of the same style. Like I would say Mike Oldfield, I love his music too. So when you get too big, sometimes you have your own tour. Other people has their own tour. I would like to know if there's any chance someday I will see you together playing.
With who? Sorry, because
Mike Oldfield.
you're moving your microphone.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry.
For example,
Mike Oldfield.
I think what I heard from Mike is now in his island and not moving too much. So I think if I want to play with him, I have to go to his island where he lives. But why not? Thank you.
Okay, guys, some more questions?
Okay, one more here.
One more? Yeah.
What do you think about electronic music mixed with rock or metal?
With what?
Rock or metal when they mix
I
up.
think I don't like the word fusion because sometimes it's a frustrating aspect from what you are mixing and from both sides. But I think that I was taking the example of Pete Townsend. You could say why in a project linked with electronic music I would collaborate with Pete Townsend. And Pete Townsend is a perfect example of what you're saying. Pete Townsend is obviously the leader of one of the most legendary rock band in the world, but he's the one who first introduced sequencers and synthesizers in rock music with songs such as
Baba Riley.
Baba Riley and Who's Next and all this. And also he pushed boundaries of music performances by inventing a new genre, which is the rock opera. So, and this is not fusion, it's actually integrating, for instance, some concepts of electronic music into rock. And like Marcus Miller did also with Miles Davis or with when he did Tutu or in his own work. And, electronic music today is everywhere. There is no boundaries anymore. I've always been convinced since the beginning of my career that electronic music is not only a genre of music, it's just a new way of writing music, new way of composing, of producing, and even today of distributing music through the net. So it's really something which is obviously is not made for one genre, but really can open doors for jazzmen, for classical musicians, for I was recently working with Lang Lang, and Lang Lang is obsessed by the sound of his instrument, by the sound of his piano. He's not only a genius and an alien playing Chopin. He's also somebody absolutely open to and obsessed with exploring sounds. And we did probably the first electronic music piece in which he was involved, and that was beyond fusion. It was really a kind of quite harmonious and very interesting experience to mix our DNAs. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Good. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, I think we have to spend some time with the System 8. You have some more questions about the System 8. So I would like to thank you all very much. Also, thank you for the people watching at home. Put your hands together one more time, ladies and gentlemen. Mr. Jean-Michel Jarre.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Have a good day.